People might remember that I've shared a lot of Dr. Baker's videos, particularly during the unspeakable thing that shan't be spoken of. You know, the unspeakable thing that shan't be spoken of. He was very much about patients' rights, very big promoter of patients' rights. Now, he is a medical doctor, and he promotes the carnivore diet. So people might find it odd that I promote some of his videos. I particularly like a lot of his videos about controlling insulin response and controlling the fact that people should not be eating garbage food. Okay, I think that everybody can agree that people should not be eating food that we know unequivocally is bad for you. Okay, but in this video he asks if the Pope is way out of line, and I'm going to react to the video and explain why. Now, the Pope, I have issues with the Pope. I personally believe that the Catholic religion needs to be banned in the United States of America as a criminal enterprise that is promoting human trafficking, as well as has promoted child pornography and a lot of other things, and also fiddles with our politics. I am no fan of the Vatican. Okay. However, I do not think the Pope is out of line on this, and I think the Pope has actually, like, some of the things the Pope has done have been very great. I liked what he's done. Like when he came to Philadelphia, he insisted on eating with the homeless people, despite the fact that Mayor Nutter, the mayor of Philadelphia, tried to hide the homeless people from the Pope, tried to take all the homeless people off the street to hide them like they didn't exist, and the Pope insisted on eating with the homeless. He also met a woman that lost her job as a clerk of courts for not marrying a homosexual couple, a Protestant woman, I believe she was, but he met with her anyway and told her, you know, keep the faith, you know, don't give in to this nonsense. So, and there's places where the Pope, I very much agree with the Pope, and there's other places where this Pope is, I gotta be honest, I mean, he's a frightening Pope. The one main one was when he tried to push illegal migration into the United States. I particularly didn't like that he was trying to push an influx of illegal migrants into the United States. I believe it's, you know, national sovereignty is up to nations, not the Pope. And that is why the King of England created the Anglican faith. People that know about Henry VIII, it's a lot more than he couldn't get a divorce. There's a lot more to that story. It was about the Pope, you know, having authority over a sovereign nation, England. And, you know, the Pope shouldn't have a say over a sovereign nation, the United States of America, and what we do with our borders to keep out people that we don't want in our country. And that's the thing, you know, he might say that Christians don't build walls. Well, there's walls around the Vatican. But I digress. Let's get into this video.
It is the largest religion in the world. There are about 2.4 billion people in the world that profess to practice Christianity. This is followed by the Islamic faith, where 1.8 billion people practice that particular religion. Hinduism comprises of about another billion people, and then Buddhism comprises another 500 million people. And those are the major religions of the world. There are obviously more religions than that, but these are the big population centers. Interestingly, in the Christian faith, Catholicism represents about 1.3 billion of those 2.4 billion Christians. And the head of the Catholic Church is the Pope. And the Pope recently came out to state that young people should cut back or give up eating meat. It is self-destructive, and we need to do that in order to save the planet. Interestingly, nowhere in the Christian faith does it indicate that being a plant-based person, giving...
There are many places in the Christian faith that state that eating a plant-centered diet is not only beneficial, but is the right thing to do. We see this particularly in Genesis, and we see this also if you read the book of Daniel, when Daniel is eschewing the foods, the rich foods of Babylon, and is only consuming, pulses and vegetables and things of that nature. So we do see And there's a whole sect of Christianity, Seventh-day Adventism. Now, that sect of Christianity happens to have the people that live the longest in the world, but that sect of Christianity promotes a plant-centered diet, okay? And that's important to understand. Not all Christians see eye to eye, but the thing that's interesting about Seventh-day Adventism is Seventh-day Adventism is far more based around the Bible than Catholicism is. But you have to remember, Catholicism is not generically Christian. A lot of what comes from Catholicism also comes from Vatican Holy Law, and the Vatican and the Catholic Church in general has a long history of promoting vegetarianism and fasting from meat on certain days of the week. This is part of the Catholic faith that goes back thousands of years. So it's not right to say that the Pope is out of line simply for promoting things that are inherently Catholic and inherently Christian. Now, what he's going to get into about Cain and Abel, where Abel offered meat and God liked the meat, and Abel offered vegetables and God didn't like the vegetables, that's not really anything to do with Christianity and not really anything to do with eating what humans are to eat. That was an offering to God. God was displeased by the vegetables, but pleased by the offering of meat. Now, I am not a Christian. I don't profess to believe in any of the Abrahamic faiths, but what I'm saying here is that reference doesn't really have to do with what humans eat. However, in Genesis and in the book of Daniel, that very much does have to do with what humans eat, okay? Because that's talking about humans and what humans are to eat. Okay, now let's go on.
Abstaining from meat is anywhere considered to be the right thing to do. In fact, you can look to the story of Cain and Abel and look at their particular offerings and see which one pleased God and which one displeased God.
Again, which one pleased God and which one displeased God. God is not humanity, okay? So that has nothing to do with how humans should eat. However, in the book of Daniel and in Genesis, where it talks about how humans should eat, it's very clear that a plant-centered diet is favored.
So, interestingly, that the Pope is now asking people to cut back meat, as if he is now an authority on climate change. Who is directing?
He's an authority on Catholicism. He may just wish to go back to a more original understanding of Catholicism, where people are fasting from meat and not eating meat on certain days of the week. In the United States, most Catholics have gone away from this these days of fasting. Many of them don't even celebrate Lent. Maybe he's trying to reorganize or reestablish Catholicism by reestablishing abstinence from meat on certain days and encouraging abstinence from meat. As I said, the Catholic Church does have a long history of promoting abstinence from meat, especially on certain days of the week and during Lent and things of that nature.
His particular messaging, it's interesting to say, is God telling him to say that, or is perhaps someone else, perhaps somebody from the World Economic...
The other thing is, it's very disappointing to me how many people are so preoccupied with this World Economic Forum conspiracy theory nonsense. I think that it's a little ridiculous. And whether the Pope chooses to work with the World Economic Forum or not, that's up to the Pope. The Pope is the head of Vatican City, which is an independent nation. Many independent nations work with the World Economic Forum, including the United States of America. Not all of these nations are encouraging people to eat less meat. And that's, although if you do follow the USDA diet, you eat plenty of meat on the USDA diet. I mean, so I don't understand what the World Economic Forum works with many countries. Not all these countries are encouraging people to eat less meat. And in fact, as far as I know, the only country that I'm aware of, honestly, because Dr. Baker made me aware of it, the only country that I'm aware of where the head of the country has told people to eat less meat is Vatican City. Okay, so, whatever.
Forum perhaps is encouraging him to say that. Who does he represent?
And let me explain again. The World Economic Forum does not have to tell the head of the Catholic religion, a religion that has over 1,000-year history of encouraging people to abstain from meat, particularly on certain days. It doesn't need to tell him to do that. That's part of Catholicism. In fact, if you follow, I'm going to leave a link in the description to this video, Dr. Baker's video, as well as my video on how to harness the longevity power of the Knights Templar. Obviously, abstinence from meat goes back a great while. In fact, the Knights Templar abstained from meat on many days, and that may be why they lived longer than other people around them. One of the reasons, although I think probably their wealth was a bigger reason, but that's one of the reasons they probably lived longer than those around them.
Interestingly enough, I mentioned the Hindu faith, which, again, 1.1 billion people comprise that particular faith. 80% of Indians that live in India are Hindu, and most of the Hindu faith is centered in India. Also places like Indonesia and a few other areas that practice Hinduism. And it is of interest that there are about a little over 1 billion head of cattle in the world. 300 million of them, the largest collection of cattle on earth, actually reside in India. A combination of about 200 cows and about another 100 billion water buffalo. Of course, many of you know that in the Hindu faith, eating cow is prohibited, and so those animals are the highest concentration in the world. They're not being eaten, and they are, to any large degree, although India does still export some cattle for slaughter and food consumption, but by and large, they are very inefficient. They are very much, if you're worried about climate change, and you would look at the cows in India probably being the biggest contributor of global greenhouse gases. Again, I think that argument is completely bogus. Animals are not destroying the planet. This is not the major issue that is driving climate change. It's absolutely ridiculous that people are...
I tend to agree with him on that. However, I have my other issues with animal agriculture, such as land waste. It's a huge waste of land and a huge waste of resources. People have to remember, you have to feed the animals that are being eaten something. So you're feeding human food to human food, which is a very inefficient use of that food. It's very well known that humans can do very well on a vegetarian diet, and it's very inefficient to be feeding, our food, our grains, legumes, etc., to cattle to create beef, to eat the beef. It's just an inefficient way to get food.
Being convinced that is, and it's clearly due to the corporate messaging out there. People just want to make a bunch of money off of you and keep you sick and keep you unhealthy. Remember.
Now, I agree with him to an extent about the faux meats and the fake meats and all that. However, eating a traditional vegetarian diet, nobody's making a whole bunch of money off of that, because it's a diet based in whole grains, legumes, and vegetables, as well as, nuts and seeds. You're not making a whole bunch of money on that. It's one of the most affordable diets that you possibly could think of. Nobody's making a ton of money off of beans and rice. Okay, except maybe Taco Bell or one of these chain Mexican restaurants that sells it, But other than that, I mean, if I make beans and rice, you're talking about maybe 80 cents per serving of food or something like that at the most. And that's including like tomatoes and vegetables and all that stuff that's going with it. So let's continue.
Unhealthy people. When we cut out meat out of our diet, we get more unhealthy people. We get more people that are malnourished. We get more people that are, quite honestly, obese.
This is not true. Research into the Tarahumara people proved that, they are not obese. They are not unhealthy. Also, traditional hunter-gatherer diets that consist predominantly of plant matter. I've done videos on that. In fact, I might link those in the description. In fact, I think I will link those in the description because these traditional hunter-gatherer diets that are predominantly plants, these lead to health. There's more factors in health and longevity than just diet, and I think people need to understand that. And that's why I also think that the Seventh-day Adventists actually do live much longer than the average person, and that's because they take into consideration those 8 laws of health, and those 8 laws of health are very good, and they take into consideration more than diet, although diet is very important, and it might even be the most important component, but it is by no means the only component to longevity.
And that drives up healthcare costs, and more importantly, or just as importantly, the healthcare sector is driving up, you know, the climate issues.
Now, I'm going to leave a link to a playlist I made on the China study. The United States, where we eat far more meat than other countries, our healthcare costs are much higher than, say, rural China. And now this has partly to do with socialized medicine and the benefits of socialized medicine over, over the capitalist structure of medicine. But more importantly, what you need to understand is that nations that eat more meat do worse with health, not the other way around. Although I don't think it's actually the meat per se. I think it's more the way people are eating the meat, such as fast food. And because that seems to be, whenever they export fast food culture, you see people doing poor health, more poor health-wise. Although Argentina, which has a very high meat consumption, is also doing very poor health-wise. And that's not anything, they're not eating a ton of fast food in Argentina as far as I'm aware, but I do know that their health is not the best. In fact, they do not get to partake of the Hispanic paradox. The Hispanic paradox is how Hispanics, despite doing worse economically and not seeing doctors as frequently, do better medically. And that's because, most likely, of their bean and rice-centered diet, but they do poor when they adopt a Western, what we would consider a Western diet. Technically, of course, they're in the Western Hemisphere, but what I'm saying is when they embrace the foods of commerce, meaning fast food and refined food and a heavy meat diet, they start doing poorly also.
The healthcare sector is incredibly pollution intensive. As a surgeon, I used to, and I'm not proud of this, but used to go through so much and create so much incredible amounts of trash and medical waste to do one operation. We would literally fill up 10 or 12 trash bags after every surgical case of just wasted stuff. So when you are contributing to the healthcare sector through poor nutrition, which definitely drives that, you're actually worsening the environment.
Yes, but the poor nutrition is not coming from vegetarianism. The poor nutrition is coming from fast food culture and garbage food culture and things of that nature. So you can't say that the poor nutrition is coming from vegetarianism.
For everybody. So, in my view, I think the Pope is way out of line on this particular issue.
Now, I'm glad he did say in his view, because that is important that he did say that. As I said, I like Dr. Baker. I like what he's doing. I like that he's an advocate for patients' rights. I like that he promotes responsible medicine, and
who am I to say, however? Now, let me know what you guys think. Do you think that the Pope should inform people on how to eat? And does religion impact your particular dietary choices? And let me know how.
I think that the Pope, as far as Catholics are concerned, he should have influence on the way they eat. Because dietary restriction is a huge part. Dietary restriction and dietary regulation, between abstaining from meat, fasting, things of that nature. These are huge parts of Catholicism in a historical sense. And that's all for this video. Links in the description.